At some point in time, somewhere in the world, there was a car. In the back seat of this car slept a young boy, only 9 years old. He was coming home after a long vacation and was half asleep when it happened. All the boy felt was confusion. First he was turning one way and then the other. There were sounds of crashing and scraping, but he hardly noticed them. He didn't have time to scream or to panic. He just continued in his dreamlike state for another couple of seconds when something else hit. Pain. Pain unlike he had ever experienced before. The inescapable pain first spread to his head and then the rest of his small body. "Mark!" He heard a familiar yet distant voice. It was his mother. "Mark!" But it was no use. His vision blurred as the next wave of pain hit. "I'm feeling a bit tired now," he thought to himself. "It's best I take another nap." And with that, his eyes closed. In the next couple of hours, the pain only grew worse. He heard many voices, but as time passed, they seemed to get more and more distant to him, as if it was not him lying in the hospital bed, but someone he was watching on TV. He still felt drowsy, and after some time he could no longer hear the voice of his father comforting his mother, or feel the pain that seized his broken body. After a while, all he could feel was drowsiness, so he allowed himself to sleep. And then there was no pain, and no voices. The boy was no longer lying in the hospital bed, and his clothes seemed to change from the hospital gown that he had previously been wearing. He opened up his eyes and was shocked to see what lay before him. He seemed to be standing in a courtyard. Its sheer size surprised him. It must have been 2, no, maybe 3 football fields long. Then the beauty of the place hit him. The floor he was standing on was made of something like marble, yet more precious somehow. On the sides were pillars of gold that shot all the way into a sky that was not its normal blue color, but instead a bright orange. But the most beautiful part of this scene before him was the castle at the end of the courtyard. It had towers and windows as far as the eye could see, and was much larger than the boy could wrap his head around.
"Shall we go then?"
A voice said, startling the boy.
"I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you."
"What's your name?" asked the boy. It seemed he was so taken back by the place he was standing, he didn't recognize he was not alone. The man was sort of difficult to look at. He was definitely a grown-up based on how tall he was, but he was too bright to look at directly. The grown-up chuckled.
"My name isn't something you'll understand yet. For now, just call me Guide. Now follow me, young one,"
Guide said to the boy, offering his hand.
"We have much to do."
So the boy took Guide's hand and followed him as they walked towards the castle.
"Listen carefully. What is about to happen will either be the most beautiful or the most terrifying thing you'll ever experience in all of eternity."
"What's in that big castle?" the boy asked.
"That's where he is."
"Who is he?" Guide stopped and picked up the boy playfully.
He also has a name you can't understand. He is God, or I am.
The boy looked at Guide confused.
He's sort of like the way that you used to look at your dad, only stronger."
With that, Guide put down the boy and led him to the door of the castle.
"You have to go in alone. I know you're used to being told not to be afraid, but this is different. If you're afraid, then you're actually off to a good start."
The boy didn't know what to say, so he just stayed silent.
"Now then, off you go,"
said Guide, and he whipped open the door and gestured for the boy to walk in. The room that the boy walked into was much different than he expected. It was white. Completely white. He saw no walls or ceiling, not even a floor. It just seemed to go on forever. Whoever was in the room was even harder to look at than Guide. He was bright. Very bright. Perhaps even brighter than the sun, but there was some sort of energy around him. It was strong yet gentle. Firm yet kind. "Are you he?" the boy asked, staring at the ground. But the powerful being did not immediately respond. He first stood up. He was at least 3 or 4 times the size of a grown man. When he opened up his mouth to speak, only one word came out. A word that is incomprehensible. In this single word, the being summed up his entire existence. The boy felt the shockwave course through his body. In an instant, he saw the life of God. God had been there since the beginning of time. No, God was time. And out of his mouth came creation. Fear overwhelmed the boy as he saw God write the laws of physics, then repeatedly break his own law. He saw an omnipresent being in the deepest part of a black hole and reaching further than even creation itself had expanded to. But what was even more surprising was the perfection of God. He had not only balanced love with justice, he was the perfect balance. The morality of God was much different than the boy had expected or felt comfortable with. It wasn't that good described God, instead God described good. And there was no wiggle room either, no opinions. You were either for him or against him, and the boy was not sure what side he wanted to be on. God had been the source of all the boy's joy in his life. Every giggle, every smile, all the singing and playing, every good step the boy had ever taken, God had been right there, taking that step with him. God had said his own name. What followed was even more terrifying. Out of the mouth of God, the boy received his own name. He watched his life unfold before his eyes, second by second, over and over, a thorough check of every thought and every deed he had ever done. His name summed up his entire existence, all of the good, and all of his many shortcomings. In the eyes of God, his life had been sinful, terribly sinful. More sin fit into one day of his existence than he thought he had sinned his entire life. Under his consciousness laid his subconscious, which only knew evil, and from the depths of his heart only came selfishness. The name also summed up his insignificance. To God, the boy was nothing more than a dirty speck in a perfect world. Unfortunately for the boy, all it takes is a dirty speck in an otherwise perfect world to make it imperfect. But the boy thought from his own perspective. Why can't I do what I think is right? He thought to himself. It's my life. I should at least get a say in what is right and wrong for me. The boy became very angry as he began to understand what God had said. In 2 words of an ongoing sentence, God had said something like, "If I am me and you are you, how could we possibly dwell together?" And the boy couldn't help but agree. But he had no authority to talk. God was not done speaking. If it was possible to translate this next word, it would have been something like judgment. He saw his inevitable destination, a place without God. And in that moment, he understood hell. If God was good, then this place had no good, and if God was love, then this place had none. The only thing that was in this terrible place was the boy, left to carry on in his sin without God. There he would try to make something for himself, but the only thing he could make without God is failure upon failure. Every attempt at finding a smile would only make him crave smiling more, but he would never be able to. There would be no peace, no joy, and no happiness. His destination had no friends or companionship. There, he would dwell forever. It had only been 2 seconds, but to the boy, it had felt like an eternity already. His blood was boiling and he wanted to scream. "What are you waiting for then? If you dare me to hell, then do it already!" But he had no authority to speak. God had one more word to say. What came next could only be described as love. God expressed to the boy that even though the boy was small and insignificant, and even though he took every opportunity to sin on earth and rebel against God, somehow, in the eyes of God, the boy was more important to him than anything else in the universe. In a perfect act of justice and love, God himself had paid the price and took hell for the boy. So if he chose, he could dwell with God. Then the boy understood the meaning of the sentence as a whole. It was not a statement about how powerful God was. It was a question about what the boy was going to do about it. He could give up and let God win, but in order to do that, he would have to admit that everything he had ever done was in vain and forfeit to God. He would have to give up his own opinion about the world and morality. Even a 9-year-old child has a lot to give up. But he did. In an instant, his anger left him, and it was replaced by joy and peace. The room was no longer white, although God was still too bright to look at directly. God then commanded Guy to walk into the room. "With you as my witness," God said with a thunderous roar, "I have pardoned him completely. In my eyes he has never sinned, and thus he needs a new name." The name that he gave the boy summed up a new existence. It was no longer about everything he had ever done. Instead, it was about a future that he was going to live out. But it was more specific. His name included future experiences and relationships with humans, angels, even God himself. But perhaps the most important thing was a future job. Heaven's scribe. Scribe, said the boy, looking at Guide for, guidance. But his answer came from God. Guide, welcome him to the gates. Make sure that he gets the keys and the fruit.
Yes, Lord,
answered Guide.
Come along, Scribe,
he said, gesturing for him to take his hand. For a second, Scribe forgot that he was a mere child to Guide. Compared to God, they both seemed so insignificant. Still, Scribe ran to his new friend and took his hand. They walked into the gates of heaven together. It was nothing like he had expected, although it was still too bright to look at anything directly.
Don't worry,
said Guide.
This land will be revealed to you in time. That's actually the first thing we need to do.
They walked into what Scribe thought was a tunnel, but even the tunnel gave his eyes no relief. Scribe tried to open them, but it was simply too brilliant to make anything out. They walked down the tunnel for about 5 minutes before reaching their destination. From what Scribe could tell, he was in some sort of room with a box in front of him.
The Lord has commanded you to open up this chest,
Guide said, handing him a key. What if I were to decide not to obey him? Asked the boy. And Guide looked at him like he were a mere child for the first time.
That's impossible. From one perspective, people that make it here will never choose to disobey. And from another, you have no choice at all. Anyway, you're still asking the wrong questions.
Well, what is the right question?
You will see.
Well, what's in that chest?
Your new body.
My new body?
Every sentient creature has a body, mind, and spirit, even God. For you to enter this realm, you need a new spirit, which God has actually already blessed you with. For you to be fully physically present, you need a new body. And for you to fully understand it, you need a new mind.
With that, Scribe opened the chest. Instantly, he grew about 3 feet, his arms and legs expanding not only in length, but in width. Suddenly, the brightness around him began to dim enough for him to see. Or at least, that's what he thought at first. Then he looked down at his hands, and he understood. It wasn't that everything became darker, he became lighter. He was physically glowing like everything else in this realm. His new body radiated energy. He felt like he could run faster and jump higher than any human on Earth could ever dream to achieve.
It has always fascinated me,
Guide said, looking very puzzled,
that we're not all the same size.
It was true. Guide was still a couple inches taller than Scribe, a bit skinnier too. It seemed to him that there was no such thing as perfect height or size. Everyone was just the size that God wanted them to be. For the first time, Scribe got a good look at his newfound friend. He didn't look exactly human, but not like a traditional angel either. His blue eyes were a bit too big to be humans, although they were roughly the same shape. He had blonde hair and wore shining white clothes. But the thing that was the most different about Guide was that he somehow didn't feel human. Somehow, Scribe knew that he wasn't an angel either. God must have created many beings that humans had no knowledge of. The next thing Scribe noticed was the room he was in. It was huge and filled with chests. With his old eyes, he would not have been able to see the end of the room. But he saw every chest. There were thousands of them, all in perfect line as if they were numbered. Are these the bodies of the rest of the humans? Asked Scribe.
No,
Guide answered with a chuckle.
All of the bodies are in one chest. Each chest contains a different secret, something new to unlock or understand for us.
What's in this one? Scribe said, gesturing to the next chest.
Your new mind,
answered Guide, giving him a sneaky smile.
And what about this one?
Scribe said, feeling both excited and a bit overwhelmed.
Before I answer that, why don't you open this one?
Then Guide pulled out the next key from his pocket. It was a greenish color. Scribe quickly took the key and opened the chest. Suddenly, his mind's eye was opened. He understood all there was to know about the earthly realm and the secrets of the universe. He grasped the relationship between time, space, and its creator. The mysteries of black holes were suddenly nothing more than a joke to him, and both the history of the cosmos and the future were known to him. He also, for the first time, understood his own name. Scribe, he said to himself.
That's right,
answered Guide.
You are going to record every judgment of every human. You will witness the greatest mystery on Earth. Some of the most glorified saints will reject God, while war criminals humble themselves before Him. Your weapon will be a paper and pen.
But what about when all the humans have been judged? Asked Scribe. Will I take on a somehow lesser position?
I honestly am not sure what God has for you, but God doesn't really do less than.
Guide paused for a bit.
Maybe the answer lies in one of these other chests.
You mean you don't know what's in the other ones?
Nope, not a clue.
Do you have the keys? We could find out.
No, I don't.
I thought I would understand everything once I opened this chest.
Of course you don't understand everything. Would you really want to live in a land knowing everything?
No, said Scribe. I guess I wouldn't.
Don't you understand yet? It's like a giant Easter egg hunt that lasts an eternity, except the prizes are much better. God is the game master, and we are the players. God created the earthly realm in 6 days, and He's been working on this one since then. There is so much to see out there in the cosmos.
His eyes beamed with excitement.
Planets, solar systems, beaming with animals and life. Who knows, maybe there are other perfect beings too.
He paused for just a second.
And that's the stuff we know to ask. Who knows what kind of secrets we can't comprehend yet.
It's all in these chests, said Scribe in awe. We just have to find the keys.